Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, and welcome to another episode of Media Matters by Anfield Index. It is Monday, the 19th of January, and it's 2 days after not the happiest Anfield left with a point against Burnley. There's been a lot of chat, there's been a lot of noise, there's a big week ahead, and we are here to discuss every single part of it. I'm joined as ever by the renowned and the respected David Lynch. And I think David will try and do this as systematically as possible because it's an emotional time for Liverpool fans. You can see that across the fan base. But if we go to the Burnley game, first of all, I know afterwards you tweeted this around the sort of performance and the result that put this out saying in this year's Liverpool down to a T to put on their best, most balanced performance up against a low block all season and still somehow find a way not to win the game. These days can happen, but it's so much harder to justify when you've dropped so many points already. And I want to kind of break this up bit by bit because the first half, Liverpool go in at the break 1-0 up. And they've missed a penalty. They've probably been the better team. And in fact, I at halftime was thinking 1-0, we probably should be more to the good, in all honesty.
Yeah, I thought they played well. To be honest, I think they play well for the majority of the game. That's kind of the theme of my analysis of this one, to be honest. And I know people are really unhappy with the result, and rightly so. Because against that level of opposition, you expect to play well and you expect to win, and Liverpool should have, and that is disappointing, particularly when it adds to all the disappointments they've had before. But if you just take this kind of, 75 minutes maybe of this 90 in isolation, I think it's one of the best that Liverpool have played all season, and on its own merits as a single football match is one of those where you kind of curse in Liverpool's luck, because I just think they create chances, they get in behind a low block. I mean, they start from the very third minute, don't they? Kirke's getting in behind, and that doesn't end in a shot, but it's a great opportunity, and they kind of continue in that vein and play really well in terms of unpicking Burnley. But of course, like you say, you get to half time and you think this is really, really good. Slot had spoken before the game about kind of wanting to get better at unpicking low blocks and kind of how much they'd worked on it in training, and he wanted to see that kind of click. And I thought, you know what, we're seeing it. Fair play to him. This is actually happening. Liverpool getting the fullbacks in behind, changing the pace of the play, quickening it up at times. And I did see Slot on the sidelines constantly telling them, quicker, let's go. And they were responding to that. So I thought a lot of good. And like you say, you get to half time and you kind of like, wow, this is only going to go one way. Liverpool will get another early doors and they'll see how to win. And we'll have a lot of positives to discuss. But obviously, it doesn't quite play out like that. But first half in particular, but also I thought a lot of positives in the second half. But of course, Liverpool don't get the result over the line. And the fact is, they haven't played well in the majority of the game so far. So this was an aberration in that sense. And so you put that all together in the context, and it's a really poor result, and you completely understand why people are unhappy.
The thing is with the second half, though, because it kind of felt like there wasn't too much happening the first sort of 10 minutes or so after the second half. And then Liverpool were okay. We were probably the shade in the better team. But for me, what was bugging me is you could see the Burnley goal coming. There was about a 5-minute period before then. Burnley were really getting a foothold in the game, as it were. And, I'm not saying they were peppering Alisson's goal by any means, but you could start to see it happening, just the change. And you were looking for maybe like make a sub, change something, because you could see it coming. And that was annoying. We just seemed to, I don't know what it was, whether I think the goal was about 65 minutes or so, but around the hour mark, you could see like whether the energy faded again, whatever it was. Burnley were growing into it, and we just didn't respond in any way.
Yeah, I kind of thought like when it was happening, they're having a little bit of a spell, and you're thinking, this can happen in games. I know Burnley are Burnley, and they're not a great side, but sometimes you do have to just kind of roll with the punches a little bit and just soak it up and whatever. But he just looked so uncomfortable in that time that it was just like when the goal came, it wasn't a surprise at all, as you say. And to be honest, it's the only 5-minute spell that Burnley have in the entire game, pretty much. And it's that kind of intensity of being able to push and. To get punished for that is just so poor, really. I mean, all you've got to do in those moments, if you're going to accept that maybe even Burnley can have 5 minutes in a game because they are a Premier League team, is you've just got to make sure nothing happens and that you shut on. And I just thought Liverpool, there was a sloppiness to it in terms of their own passing and looking after the ball in possession to give Burnley some momentum. But then also on the defensive side of things is not seeing where the spare man is, not putting pressure on the ball. For me, Canate completely switches off. I mean, the fact that the guy gets down the outside of him, Edwards, I've defended Canate a lot of times this season, but that is really poor defending because you could see it coming as soon as Florentino Luis traps the ball. I looked at Canate and he's on his heels so badly, and you're like, oh, it's coming down your side, And then when he gets the ball and okay, he's getting a shot off and an excellent finish from there, you've got to give him credit. But, pressure on the ball was needed, and Canate needed to know and react quicker to the fact that that's the only space that the man wants to go into. So why are you not covering that off a bit better? So really, really poor goal to concede. And as you say, it kind of felt like it was coming in that period. And, it's Burnley's sole shot on target. So again, it comes back to the performance overall. If you're going to allow your opposition one shot on target, it's overall not a bad performance generally when you speak about it like that. But you can't let them score from it. And one thing I will say that is probably more damning of the performance is I've also seen that happen to kind of average Liverpool sides a lot down the years, where the one chance they give up in an entire game is a decent one, gets taken, and they can't take their own chances despite taking endless shots. So as much as I'm kind of defending the performance and the way it looked, and a lot of it I thought was positive, it's a very kind of Europa League level Liverpool team that does that, that concedes that goal and doesn't take their own chances. And I think that's, to be honest, that's the team we're watching at the moment, isn't it? They are of that level.
Yeah, it's hard. There's just been too much evidence for too long a period. And you talked about endless shots as well. I know people were sort of fixating this, and we'll talk about XG, which was over 3, 32 shots in total, 11 on target. But it is important to say when you're analysing this, the penalty is going to skew the XG as well. That's obviously going to take it up a bit. But a lot of the shots were almost outside the area, low value, as a lot of analysts will tell you, wasn't it? We were almost, Martin Dubravka was building a nice highlights reel on YouTube, I thought, because he was saving them from long range, and they look great. And on the other side, someone's going to chirp in with Cody Gakpo, I think, had a few turned off the line and that. But the XG's got to be analysed in its full context there.
Yeah, but to be fair, I would say I am less down on the XG element of this performance than some of the analysis I've seen. I maybe disagree with some people on that. I thought Liverpool created enough really good opportunities to win this match, and not just to win it 2-1, but to win it handily. You're right. Okay, you can take 0.75 off the XG tally for the penalty. But then to create kind of roughly 2.4-ish XG at home to Burnley is absolutely fine. I think anything in the kind of 3s on its own is, that's crazy territory, really. That's an awful lot of XG. So, to create the rest is a decent amount. And I think of Cody Gakpo off the line. I think of the one where Florian Wirtz dances through and he gets a shot away that's just stopped. McAllister blasts one over when he should do better. And of course, you can take the penalty out if you want, but it's a good chance. It's a good chance. It would have been nice if you just popped it in. So I think, like I say, I think all the criticisms of Slot are absolutely valid, but I almost think the ones around the attacking aspects of the play, they're probably not relevant to this game. The problem for him is that that was a rarity, really, what we saw at the weekend, and also, we don't think it's replicable, and also he didn't take the chances in the end anyway. So, the negatives are there, but I, for me, genuinely, I'm absolutely fine with the attacking performance, bar that final bit of finishing. I thought Liverpool, they got in behind, they created high quality opportunities against the low block, which they've completely failed to do all season. Like I say, I almost want to kind of pull this game out as a separate case to the rest of them, even though I still completely agree that the result itself really doesn't help Arne Slot. And I've criticised him enough this season, but I don't think there's any way you can kind of slice this up and try and say that was not bar finishing. As I admit, is quite an important part of it. But in terms of the build-up and the getting into dangerous areas and the creating chances, I mean, for example, they don't even get any XG for the one in the 3rd minute from Kirkes when he puts the cross in, because it gets cut out. So you don't even get a shot there. And there's a few moments like that. So, this attacking performance for me in terms of the underlying metrics is absolutely fine. But as I say, the pressure's on Slot because he doesn't get the results anyway. And this has not happened anywhere near enough this season. No. And also, it's against one of the worst teams in the league. And so I'm not that convinced that this is going to be the norm now.
No, I don't think anyone is. And he's not trying to be disrespectful to Burnley, but they are where they are in the table and the level they are. It is, something to be taken into account as well. In terms of the ultimate positive, I mean, I don't almost know what goes on. The worse the results get, the better Florian Wirtz seems to play almost. He's just literally, you could see again on Saturday, just a level above anyone else on the pitch.
Yeah, he's really coming into his own now, isn't he? And you look at the kind of numbers as well. His goal is brilliant, by the way. And I think I said on my post-match, I don't think he scores that goal 3 or 4 months ago. No. I did an analysis, I think it was in maybe the second or third international break of Wirtz and where he was up to. And I showed some numbers I thought were encouraging, showed some numbers I thought he maybe needed to improve on. And one of the things I said about improving on was that a lot of his shots were getting blocked. And I said, that's just for me about speed of the league. In the Bundesliga, you will get more time to get those shots away. I want to see more of those shots as he progresses, hitting the target, getting them away quicker. And like I say, I don't think he scores that goal 3 or 4 months ago because the speed with which he just trapped, bang, top corner, that would have got blocked a while ago. So he's adapting. We're seeing this in real time now that he's getting quicker, getting better. And then the other aspects of his performance I really, really loved as well was, a couple of the one where he sets up Gakpo, the one where he gets the shot away himself. He's holding players off. He's using that extra muscle that he's got now to really show his strength. And so, you don't have to be unbelievable kind of grok size to compete in this league. You just have to be good enough to be able to hold them, just strong enough in your core. You see it with Salah. He's not the biggest guy, but he's so unbelievably strong in his football specific way. And so Wirtz is clearly benefiting from that as well. So, adds up to one of his best performances, really. Gets the goal, sets up chances that should have ended up in more, gets, I think, 4 shots, 3 chances created, looks really good in the dribbling, all aspects, dominating the build-up. And that's why I say, that's why there were positives in the attack, because I think Wirtz was at the heart of that. And you can just see how important I think he's going to be for this team going forward. There's not a lot to love about Liverpool at the moment, but I am really enjoying watching Florian Wirtz kind of bloom.
Yeah, he must be looking around and thinking, does anyone want to help me a little bit? Although the new signings I thought did well, as in Kirkes had another good game. I know, like you, I'm thinking, why doesn't he just leather it into the bottom corner when he breaks through early doors as that? But I thought he had a good game. Frimpong, again, lively on the right, made things happen. Ekitike does really well from the goal. In fact, it was probably a good day for the newer signings.
Yeah, and I think, kind of earlier in the season, I kind of thought one of the mitigating factors for Slot was that he'd been given these new signings, they were adapting. It's a very difficult process to go through, and that makes it harder for you. But it almost kind of makes it more damning for the manager now, doesn't it? That all these players are now starting to show how good they are, and yet he's not being able to create this cohesive unit that can regularly win games. So, I agree. I thought Kirkes fantastic again. We're seeing a bit more on the attacking side now. Love his kind of energy and the pace, the physicality he brings to the game as well, which, we know that obsession with PSG and wanting to be more like them. Well, he's very much in that kind of mold, isn't he? He can get up and down all day. He even wins headers. He's really, really great energy to him, but he's a quality footballer as well and very rarely beaten down his side. So, really, really enjoyed his performance. Ekitike, brilliant around the goal, brilliant generally in kind of his involvement. Would just like to see Liverpool give him more chances to shoot. Frimpong again, proving how kind of important he is. So, his pace and versatility has been really key in this period. So they're all kind of bubbling up a bit now, which is good for Liverpool in the long term. I think it proves they didn't sign bad players at all. But like I say, for the manager, the fact that you've got these players now starting to play and he's still not kind of looking like a great team is, it's a bit of a problem for him.
Yeah, it's a bit of a worry when you're looking at the newer lads as the ones that are shining and talking about the existing players. I mean, we talked there about Canate. Yeah, not great. I've got to be honest, though, from watching this game, when you're in the stadium, but even the highlights afterwards, you can look at it and say, well, Curtis Jones ends with an assist and we've only conceded a goal. But I know Dominic Szoboszlai missed a penalty, so I don't want to hammer him too much for that. But that midfield three, I mean, you mentioned Alexis McAllister misses a good chance as well. I wouldn't say it was a big chance by any means, but I just don't think the midfield, like the second half, they didn't really impress me.
I don't know. I feel like in terms of kind of for the majority of the game, really, I thought they were kind of doing the job, really, which was just to pen Burnley and completely stop any counter-attacks, recycle the ball to the forwards. For me, they kind of did the job. I don't think you can put up kind of 3 expected goals up against kind of 0 point nothing. I don't know. It was not a lot for Burnley.
Yeah.
Without generally putting together a good game and a good kind of performance in terms of doing what you need to do against opposition like that, which is to stop them getting counter-attacks on you, stop them from set pieces, and just keep putting the attack on the front foot and give them the ability to create chances. And that, to be honest, I don't have any massive complaints about that. I mean, what you would have liked is maybe one of them to kind of find the cutting edge at the end. Maybe you do need your midfielders to chip in with goals in those situations when it's all kind of backs to the wall. And that kind of didn't happen. But I wasn't too against what they did. I just thought the biggest problem for me really was what happened around the substitutions. And I think they just started to make Liverpool worse, to be honest, because like I say, it was a really functional performance, really, in terms of the game plan is to just pen Burnley in massively, create chances and do that over and over and over and hope you score enough goals to win the game, and that they don't even get the chances to do that. And Liverpool managed to succeed in that. And yet when they were pushing at the end, they just needed to do more of the same. And yet the manager just starts throwing on forwards, as he is prone to doing at the moment. And I thought they completely lost the way on the basis of that. I thought it was a poor decision, really, because then Liverpool suddenly couldn't get the ball into the final third. And you're like, well, yeah, that's because the midfielders were doing that and they were stopping Burnley getting out. And then all of a sudden Burnley could get out a little bit more, albeit they didn't create much from it. So for me, I thought the manager made some poor decisions around that. And it's not the first time he's done that.
Nah, it is fun. I mean, Robbo was having a horror show. I think he runs it 20 yards backwards out of play at one stage as well. So that was...
I think with that sub, what he's trying to do is kind of think, well, Robertson's got a bit more quality in the cross than Kerkez does, which I think is fair. I think Kerkez has got a little bit to go in terms of that, but it didn't work, as you said. I just thought Robertson came on was pretty dreadful. So that completely killed momentum. And yeah, the fact that they didn't really then have midfielders as much to work with was a problem for them. And yeah, it just made Liverpool worse. And I think the start of the season, that was really working for Liverpool, wasn't it? It was just throwing on forwards till, excuse me, they scored a goal. It's not worked for months now. And I just wish the manager would stop doing it. You need to keep a functional team on. Klopp was a very attacking manager, but he didn't used to just throw forwards on. He would always try and keep structure and just make sure you were doing good, smart football things to keep them penned in. And then the opportunity will come. Whereas you throw forwards on and all of a sudden you've got Chiesa chasing back to try and stop a counter attack. You're struggling because you're just not doing smart football things. You're just trying to blam the ball into the box and hope it falls for you.
And Chiesa giving that foul away right at the end, you were like, what are you doing? So that summed up the substitutions as well. And one player that we've discussed a lot this season, Cody Gakpo, there's a real mixed review on this because, I mean, anyone who thinks he's on corners needs muting straight away because his corners were horrendous. But he has a few off the line. But then again, like you see it in the stadium, a few, I think attacks did break down with him, almost the standard Gakpo criticisms. What did you make of him on Saturday?
Yeah, I thought he didn't play well again. I don't think he's playing well at the moment, to be honest. I mean, you can kind of have two cleared off the line, but for me, that's... You've got to kind of finish it better, haven't you? I just think he's not confident or playing well at the moment. And again, it comes back to he played well last season. He's capable of more than this. So what can the manager do to work with him to get more out of him, to stop him showing the habits he is at the moment, to get him working better with his left back? How much work is being done on that? I'm not sure, but we aren't seeing the fruits of that in any way if it is being done. And you just think at the moment he's playing in such a way that you kind of don't really want him in the team because he's just not playing well enough at the moment. And I'm a big fan of Gakpo, and I think he's a really helpful person to have around in terms of the squad quality, but he's not having a great season. And it's kind of, I guess, some part on him, but also some part on the manager as well. Can you get a bit more out of him?
Yeah, maybe summing up Liverpool's troubles and the existing players at the moment, how it's going for him. In terms of off the pitch, I mean, there's a lot to talk about in this section as well. Now, I know you're one that'll often be like, don't overanalyze what the manager's said, but you probably recognise part of the quote that's on the screen there around Calvin Ramsey. And, he was asked about this, which I thought was a good question in the presser. It's gone viral and there's been different reactions to this. A lot of people have been critical. My big thing about this is I get what he said, first of all, and I get what he was alluding to about his options at right back. I just think, though, at the same time, he almost goes through every other player to make it clear that Calvin Ramsey is about sixth choice in his thinking. But it's the fact twice he says, and he says it twice and even doubles down on it almost. But in my opinion, at the end, we have better options. Is there not an argument for, well, that's not going to give Calvin Ramsey any confidence, is there?
No, there's two sides to this for me. I mean, one of them is that I think people really need to stop building Calvin Ramsey up in their minds off the basis of having a decent 60 minutes against Crystal Palace in the League Cup in a game in which Liverpool got torn apart. Like, we've seen it so many times. I've seen Liverpool sell young players and there's been uproar about it, and then they've gone out and they've done absolutely nothing. Managers work with these players every week. They know what their level is. And I'm telling you now, like, this is not harsh to say, but Calvin Ramsey is not Liverpool level. He's not close to it. He's had loans in League One that have not worked out for him. So, this is not his level. And the idea that, you need to keep Calvin Ramsey, he should be in and around it. He should be starting games. We really need to kind of shoot that down, because not to be like overly harsh on the play, but just, I think people build them up and it's, it becomes a new stick to beat the manager with. Calvin Ramsey's not of Liverpool level. He might pick up the odd minutes here and there, but he really isn't. And that's why the manager said that. Of course, conversely, I also kind of agree that there's no need for the manager to say it. If there arises a situation whereby you need him, which is very feasible, by the way, that is, Gomez going down with an injury or Canate going down with an injury, and therefore Gomez is needed at centre-half, and then Frimpong has to play on the right wing, so you need a right back, or, even if for 5 minutes at the end of the game, and it's Calvin Ramsey just to help out, to replace someone who's you don't want to get a hamstring pull or anything like that. Why would you talk him down in that way? What is the point? There's just zero benefit. And I totally get this thing about, Dutch honesty and all that. And, this is his character. This is who he is. But just, even if you're an incredibly honest person, you really kind of treasure that as one of your qualities, like, just be a bit smarter.
Yeah.
So, you don't, I know what I'm saying here is kind of stupid as a journalist, and it's kind of counterproductive, really, in that, why don't you lie to us? But seriously, why don't you lie to us? Like, Klopp did it all the time.
Yeah.
He kind of built players up. Even if he thought that they weren't very good, he was happy to talk them up and say they were of a certain level or whatever, when he clearly knew that they weren't, and did everything, and that's how you get yourself in a situation whereby you can put Bobby Clark in to start a Premier League game away from home at Nottingham Forest and go and win it. Even though Bobby Clark, quite clearly, I mean, if Klopp had been honest about him, you look where he is at the moment. He was at Liverpool level. He never was going to be. But every opportunity he got, Jurgen Klopp spoke him up, because he thought, maybe there's going to be a time where I need to use him. And there was. And so why not with Calvin Ramsey? There might be a chance you have to use him. Why not talk him up, give him some confidence, make him feel better about himself? So, like I say, I don't think Calvin Ramsey's at the level, but as a manager, there's just, like I say, there's just zero benefit to being honest, and there are loads of benefits to being dishonest in that situation. just take the easy win of saying, Calvin, he's had an opportunity, he's around the squad, he's a great lad. It's going to still be a challenge for him to get in there, but we know he's a good player and we can count on him if we need to. Easy as that. So that, it's kind of surprised me in that sense, I guess.
Yeah, because otherwise you don't get a performance out of McConnell, Clark, Jadon Dans in a Carabao Cup and things like that. That's the difference between it. It just seems, I think smart is the right word I'd use there as well. And in terms of whether this is smart, we have to go into this. Now, I think it's important to say we were both at Anfield on Saturday because I've seen commentary about it from people who weren't. And that's not to be match goers, non-match goers, but important to be honest about it. It isn't the first time we've heard boos at Anfield this season. We've got to be honest in that. And in fact, the last few games, whatever the volume, which we'll talk about, it's getting repeated a bit now, isn't it? We've heard it in a good few games recently.
Yeah, I think it kind of really puts paid to the myth that it's only kind of online fans who are not happy with what they're seeing, and that the Anfield crowd is patient and is understanding, but they're not going to put up with this forever. I mean, it's 5 wins in 17, it's 4 draws on the bounce. It's I thought the Burnley performance was, like I say, I kind of was quite high on the Burnley performance in comparison to others, but it's also drop points against a relegation team in a period when you're pushing for top 4 and you can't afford to keep slipping up. And, they haven't really seen it. They've seen it, 12 games unbeaten, 13? I think 12 maybe. But they haven't really seen any massive improvement in terms of what's being produced on the pitch. So they're not happy. And it wasn't like the whole ground rocked with boo, was it? But it was a sizable chunk of people were booing and weren't happy with it, and so it's clearly they're not pleased with what they're seeing, and I think rightly so, because it's not great. So and it's happened at other games and now again, and I just think again it just all this feeling of kind of discontent is definitely there. It's not just lunatics online who are saying this. It's there are match going fans who pay money, who are kind of a little bit bored of what they're seeing and aren't happy with it, and could recognise that, yes, this is a league-winning manager, but we're really disappointed with what's being produced at the moment and have been for the majority of the season. And, I know it's created a lot of debate online, but I at the end of the day, people are saying what they feel, and they weren't happy with what they saw, and they've not been recently at all.
Yeah, I'm kind of split because I don't boo because I don't think it's helpful. I don't think it's going to achieve anything.
Also, it's also slightly a comical thing to do, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, exactly. But people pay the money. They've got a right to do it. And also, the one bit I'm taking umbrage now is a lot of people saying we've never done this. We've been in that stadium. We've seen Benitez teams, Rodgers teams, Roy Hodgson's teams boo. So that's just a myth to say Liverpool fans have never booed. Not regularly, but we need to be factual about this. I suppose it felt different because, like you said, like there was things to look at that have been better in recent weeks. But this just felt like a pivotal weekend in terms of every fan goes to the match, watches it, whatever. The discontent just seemed to grow to a new level almost this weekend.
Yeah, because I just think a lot of it as well is like people are not, like I say, take maybe Burnley out of it but are not kind of loving the football they're watching either.
Nah.
And the fact is, you probably, you're seeing a real discontent across the Premier League generally, I think, at the moment, which is something we've talked about a lot. And I think that's growing because the price you pay to get in is getting absolutely scandalous. You're having to queue for 10 years to get into the ground these days so you can get searched. It's not an enjoyable experience. And so when you sit in your seat, fair enough. If you want to treat me like a customer, then entertain me. And that's not happening at the moment. And that's not just Liverpool. That's all over the country at the moment. So, clubs have got to be seriously mindful of that they need to start putting on a better show than they are at the minute. And for Liverpool, I just think it's, I think enough kind of leeway has been given regarding mitigation and those things. You just want to start seeing, the last good performance for me, and I mean really, really balanced, and they won and they deserve to win. And, I would have said Burnley would have been that if they got over the line, but of course they didn't. But, last time he kind of put up those underlying numbers and actually won and played well was probably, was it Real Madrid before Villa or Villa before Real Madrid, whichever way that they were. But that those couple of performances back to back. So it's been a long time, and this is an expensively assembled side. And I just don't think there's kind of, like I say, there's been a lot of mitigation going into this season, but not by this point in January did I expect them to be so insipid. And that's what people are seeing. They're not happy, and that's why they're booing. And, I saw a friend of mine who sits near the press box, and he was walking out. We were talking, him and his wife, and, they were saying kind of, their match goers, their season ticket holders, and they said, it's not good, is it? They didn't necessarily boo, but they didn't enjoy what they saw. They're not enjoying what they're watching at the moment. And there is discontent in the ground. So we can try and pretend that doesn't exist, and that it's only a madman would dare say that Slot might be under pressure here. But he is, because, fans are talking now and saying it. And this is fans who go regularly, who spend their money to do it, who, if you want to say they've got more of a right to voice their opinion, certainly more the ability to do so because they're closer to it. They're showing their opinion, and it's not a positive one.
Nah, it really isn't at the moment. And the only other big thing that came out about the style of play, and we've talked about the lack of progression, the side-to-side element before, and that, I think one topic that really came up, and you saw it, because it was weird. I did see Arne Slot, like you said, at parts in the first half, I was confused, because he was like on a few occasions like, yeah, come on, like doing the hands. But this has got to be said as well, because we enjoy kind of a view where you can see into the dugout as well. Dominic Szoboszlai especially, he did the calm down gesture or slow it down, but he did it a few times. You could see Arne Slot applauded that, and there was times like, why aren't we breaking? Why aren't we trying to go faster? That seemed to be a theme from this weekend.
Yeah, it's strange because Slot was kind of trying to get sometimes Alisson to release it quickly, let's go. And I saw him really encouraging to get up the pitch quicker and move, obviously, when he saw opportunities to do that. And then other times, as you say, Szoboszlai taking it, calming everyone down, slower passing. And I guess the thing is, we probably can't overanalyze that, in the sense that I guess sometimes it is right to go quick and sometimes it's right to go slow. There are times where I've said, like, I thought Liverpool under Klopp, sometimes particularly the latter parts of Klopp, tried to play too quickly sometimes, all the time, and where you were better to pen them in and work your opportunity. And I think I thought Liverpool found the balance with that. I know, again, I think there's this thing to kind of try and bunch the Burnley performance in with everything else we've seen this season. I almost think people should, and it certainly is my opinion, that you should take it as a separate thing, really, to everything else that we've seen. And that's not to say this is brilliant, this is going to be sustainable, because it's against a really bad team, by the way. So I don't think everything's solved, or that they'll suddenly do this again in every game. I really, really don't think that. But, it's kind of, I think they got the balance right in terms of when to play quick, when to play slow, because they created enough opportunities. They really, really did create enough opportunities to win that game comfortably and just didn't take them. So, I think generally speaking, the frustration around that slowing it down is being justified. But I think in this game, I felt Liverpool judged it correctly, personally. And I didn't see, over the top, passing it round the back really slowly. I thought Liverpool did attempt. You can't create 32 shots and as many shots inside the box as Liverpool did, and 11 shots on target without playing the right way in terms of trying to unlock a low block. I thought they made a lot of good decisions around that. But the problem is for Slot, like I always say, everything that's kind of gone before that has been so discouraging that, if you play in a good way in one game and you don't win, then, rightly people are going to criticise you.
They are. And your colleagues as well, the other patch journals have been writing about Arne Slot. You'd have probably seen James Pearce had an article out. Paul Joyce talked about it. It was interesting. Paul Joyce put in his that questions around, the need for churn, which we'll have to talk about a little bit, and reinvestment, but also mentioning that there is question marks against the future of not just Arne Slot, but Michael Edwards and Richard Hughes, who both of those will also have 12 months left to go on the deal at the moment. And James Pearce had written about there's no appetite from FSG, the powers that above, but mention the looming figure of Xabi Alonso being there as well. I mean, a lot of people will go into the Alonso thing a little bit. I think it's important because a lot of people now are like, get Xavi in. But there's a couple of things on that. There's no appetite, it seems, is there, from above at the moment, despite even the boos? Could that change it at all?
I wouldn't think so. I think they clearly want to get to the end of the season with Slot if they can. They don't want to make a mid-season managerial change, because the reason for that is, who do you appoint as the interim? Maybe Steven Gerrard, but so much affection for Stevie, but I don't think that would necessarily be a wise move, to be honest. I don't think it's going to make Liverpool better and get them in the top four. So it's clearly would be better to make the managerial change in the summer, and if Slot can somehow get them over the line and limp into the top four, then that would be the ideal scenario. But I think his future's already kind of set, to be honest. It's been so pronounced, this decline, for such a long time, really, that it is only a case of getting to the summer, albeit if he suddenly starts to lose 6-7 on the bounce again, then he will get bulleted, because they'll feel forced to go for an interim. But I totally understand James's reporting there, in that they don't want to change. They really would prefer not to. And at the moment they are in fourth, so the minimum expectation there is about to be met if they continue somehow to hold on to that. I totally get that standing. And then it's kind of go for a manager then in the summer. There's people talking about going and getting Xabi Alonso now. He's not going to want to walk into a job now. So it's going to have to be an interim if you sack the manager now. So if everybody wants that, then look at the interim options. Who are they? Who do you think would do it? Who wants it? I don't think there's a great deal out there, really. So, I understand why Liverpool are like that, but I also kind of have concerns it's going to cost them top four.
Yeah, it's just not looking good in many scenarios that you unfold there. And this is important. We've talked about this before as well. And I know you never like the word churn or what it can bring or multiple transfers, but Paul Joyce wrote about it this weekend. You'll have seen it. Things that we've talked about before, that this summer is going to require reinvestment because of the profile, who might leave as well. Even talked, we'll get on to Mark Gay a little bit as well, but it could well be another summer, maybe not quite to the level of what we've just seen, but there's going to be incomings, outgoings, and a lot of changes, it feels like, again, doesn't it?
Yeah, but I think the important thing is it's not going to be like last summer, because I think that they really did make things difficult for themselves in terms of doing that. I think there probably is going to be, you can make a case Chiesa will go, definitely. I think from the Mo Salah will probably go. And then you move into midfield. I think there's a big shout from McAllister. Centre half, Canate doesn't seem to be signing a new contract. Joe Gomez will probably go. So that's what, four players there immediately that you're going to have to replace. But I think outside of that, Liverpool, maybe Andy Robertson as well, actually throw that in. Yeah, but then obviously he could be replaced with Kostas Tsimikas in theory. So, you're in a bit of a strange situation, really, whereby you could end up having to, be forced to do maybe 5. And it feels like an awful lot, that. But of course, they did more than that last summer. It was a really, really big summer, wasn't it, in the end? And hopefully kind of fewer of those are kind of key parts of the team that you're having to replace, and you can kind of be settled to a degree. So that'll be the hope, really. But there will be a lot to do inevitably, as there was last season, because that certain players are going to leave. And that is what creates the churn massively. And looks like it's going to be unavoidable again. You just hope they can manage it a bit more than last season, because you don't want to be. I wouldn't like to see Liverpool sign as many as they did last summer, to be honest, or get close to that, because it just creates too much.
It will be fascinating to see, what will happen in the summer, and even in January, because we talked about this, almost a reoccurring theme, but it's right to, whilst the window's open. Mark Gay is set to get an unbelievable offer and sign for a City player, so you understand why that's not happening. Now, also, it's important to mention that Jeremy Jacquet looks close to Chelsea, doesn't he? That they'll set to offer him a deal. And basically, I suppose, people are wanting transfers in because we need a centre-half. We've talked about that. There's no point in hiding that at all. But what people are probably mixing together is players that Liverpool have clearly looked at or had interest in, like Mark Gay and Jeremy Jacquet, look like they're going elsewhere. So that's just going to add to the frustration, isn't it?
Yeah, the thing is with Gay, like you said before, really, 300 grand a week, it's an absolutely ridiculous amount of money that Liverpool wouldn't go anywhere near, and they shouldn't have gone anywhere near. And so I can completely justify that in isolation. Of course, they made a huge error by not getting it over the line in the summer, but you can't say that this is another error to not go in at this amount of money. It would have been ridiculous. And I just don't think he's of that level to be getting paid that amount of money either. I'm not as high on Gay as some people have been, but I think the error was in the summer, and that they deserve every bit of criticism around that, but not for not going for him in January for that kind of money. And on Xhaka, he's a player Liverpool have watched, but for me, and again, I've said this before, not a player that improves Liverpool immediately. He's another young centre-half that comes in, they'll hope he's of a decent level, but coming from that league, it will take some adapting, and Liverpool need more experienced profiles to add to the centre-half pool that they've got. And that's for not just now, but for next season. Leone should be the young centre-half in that collection of centre-halves. They don't need Xhaka. And they've watched him. They've kept an eye on his development, but I didn't expect them to move from him. And I don't think anybody should be worried, well, Chelsea are going for him. Well, yeah, Chelsea go for a lot of young players, and barely any of them play well for them. So, I don't think this says anything, or people should be frustrated about that, to be honest, because I don't think he would make any impact whatsoever for Liverpool if they were to sign him now. And I don't think he'll make any impact at Chelsea either now or in the long term, to be honest, because they just completely ruin players' careers. So I don't think that's one that should give rise to any frustration at all. The one thing I would like to see Liverpool do this winter is sign an experienced and high-quality centre-half, and I don't think Xhaka ticks both of those boxes at the moment.
But it does look like it's going to be a quiet, non-existent January window for us all, and that is where the frustration will breed. In terms of this coming week, I mean, you look at the fixtures, and even as I say this coming week to you, just what's left by the end of January, it's a hell of a run coming up. I mean, Marseille away on Wednesday, then we got Bournemouth at home to complete the week, and even Karabag, and a couple at home there as well, Newcastle. This week, and I know we say this, but just because of where it sits on everything, it is a massive week, and the pressure could almost just get untenable, possibly, it feels, on Arne Slot if it's bad results in both of these.
Yeah, I think a massive week in terms of if they lose to Marseille, then the chances of getting through in the top 8 look to have taken a serious hit, and they probably won't do. So that adds 2 more games and the risk of going out of the Champions League nice and early, which FSG will pay attention to because it's a lot of money. Yeah. So that's a huge game. And then the Bournemouth one, if they do lose that, they're probably going to be out of the top 4, aren't they? Because, United seems to be getting a bounce. There's just enough teams there waiting in the wings to jump up. So, and that looks a really tough game on paper. So, another kind of crucial week, and you don't have great expectations going into it, quite frankly. So, we'll see what they get, but it's not going to help the pressure that he's got this tough run now.
It is a tough run, and in a weird way, because like you say, I mean, there's 3 or 4 teams that are within 3 points of Liverpool now in the top 4, Marseille, and the pressure there. In a weird, perverse way, it's just this season, like, actually, Arsenal away, Inter at the San Siro, Real Madrid at home, and yet we can't beat any of the promoted teams. Are Liverpool just better playing better teams this season?
Yeah, maybe that will help them out a little bit, is to have teams kind of come on to them a bit, and you can play this kind of slow and kind of defensive football, and that will help them out. I mean, that's got to be the hope, because the fact is the games are about to get tougher now. They've wasted so badly this run of fixtures that they've had in the Premier League. Is it 6 draws out the last 10 in a run where they should have been, honestly, clocking up in a normal season kind of 8 wins out of 10. And yet here they are, and they've put themselves in a position now where they're going to have to get good results in a lot of tough games between now and the end of the season now to get in the top 4. I honestly don't think, looking at what they've got left, that they will get near it, to be honest. I just don't. I've got no faith in the process of them getting there, to be honest, because the performances and the results are just nowhere near good enough. So, it's just what a waste of that run that they had, and I think the consequences of that are going to be felt now.
They are, and I mean, in Europe, there's a couple of things to say with this. Marseille away. I mean, Marseille themselves, they're looking up. They're only 3 points behind us, so they'll have visions of getting, a chance of an automatic spot if they get this. You've got Dortmund and Tottenham playing each other. So Liverpool, if a bad result comes in this, there's a realistic chance of a two-legged playoff, even if you get a result against Karabakh at home. And look at the injury. Liverpool can't really afford an extra 2 games on the docket now, can they?
No, absolutely not, because the squad's a bit stretched in certain areas. It's, more games where you maybe have to use Joe Gomez, and then that increases the likelihood of him picking up an injury. It's all those problems. And to be honest, I mean, depending on who they get, you don't fancy them to beat anyone. So it's like to throw in the extra games there to just get knocked out before you get to the latter stages again. It's costing you money and would be a disaster. So, it doesn't help them at all. And they need to get a result against Marseille to kind of avoid that. But, that is a tough place to go. They play kind of expansive football. They've got some good players as well, and the atmosphere is good there. And Liverpool's not great. So, you don't have a lot of optimism going into it, I'd say.
Yeah, it is a tough one. I suppose in terms of trying to look for the positives, we talked about the tough games. Mo Salah, Arne Slot was naturally, or were in talks, and of course he was going to be a bit elusive about this. You think he played the 3rd and 4th place playoff, but of course it went to penalties, so he went 120 minutes. Do you think he's going to be in Marseille with them?
I'd like to think so. I think the turnaround is not incredibly tight. So, even just to be able to get him on the bench would be pretty helpful, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised at all if he was involved. I'd like to see that he would, and he would be keen to get back and be involved as well, I think. Definitely not a starter, I'd say, but to have him on the bench would be a boost as well. And, you think about kind of the chances Liverpool were creating at the weekend, to have him on the end of a couple of them might have been helpful. I think he'll be keen to get back in. And if Liverpool have got the opportunity to use him as a sub at the very least, then I think they'll take it. So, I'm quite optimistic he might be involved against Marseille. But of course, we'll have to see kind of the training sessions where things are up to with that.
Yeah, it's open training about midday-ish tomorrow, isn't it? And then we'll have the press conference for player and Arne Slot on Tuesday evening as well. And we've discussed this before, because I never like sweeping statements like it's all crap or it's all good. There's always a nuance to everything. But you look at like that Premier League at the moment. I mean, you look at the form tip runs of even like Arsenal, City, Villa, all, by the way, who didn't win this weekend as well. I mean, first thing when you look at that table is, do you not look at it and think 10 wins out of 22? How the Christ in hell are Liverpool in 4th place still?
Yeah, it just shows you why everybody's kind of unhappy, because they don't think anybody in the league, and please, people, don't take this as me kind of excusing Liverpool at the moment, but I really sincerely believe that nobody's playing well. Nobody is playing consistently well in this league. I think I'm right in saying Villa got booed off after losing to Everton, and they just kind of, they've been decent this season. One of the few sides you'd say, their fans might be happy. Well, apparently not. So, it just shows you. I just think there's kind of huge discontent across the entire league, and I think the style of football that's kind of on vogue at the moment is a big part of that. And what I really hope there's an evolution coming where some of the bigger sides kind of work this out and they find a way to counter it, because so many of the games are like dull to watch, and this is not anything to do with Liverpool. I've just watched a lot of bad games this season, so I'd like to think there's a way around that, really. But it just shows you again, if Liverpool won 3 or 4 on the bounce, they would absolutely pull away in that top 4 race. But they just don't seem capable of it at the moment. So they really do need to. But we're waiting for a click that will probably never come this season. I don't know whether that's because of what's possible in the league. I don't know if it's because the manager, the players, or whatever. But it's it would not take much for Liverpool to really take hold of that top 4 race. But belief in their capability to do it is pretty low.
Is the worry now as well, because the 2 teams below them in United and Chelsea won this weekend, and you actually go down to 9th place, who are only 3 points off Liverpool. But probably when you're thinking about longer term threats, this is not trying to do down any Brentford or Sunderland fans, but it's not good to be looking just 3 points off you of United, Chelsea and Newcastle, teams that you think probably they're all basket case of clubs, but they could just put a little run together potentially.
Yeah, 100%, particularly United, where, I'm not buying into this idea that they're suddenly back because they put on a good counter-attacking performance against a rival, which they've done so many times down the years in recent years and got results. I mean, they beat Liverpool at Anfield under Amorim a few months ago and just sacked him. So they're clearly capable of doing that. But if they get any small bounce, if they get a bounce that gives them 3 wins on the bounce, in this run that's coming up, then Liverpool are screwed because they can't match that sort of form. So that's why it's important Liverpool turn things around. But I just cannot see it. I really cannot see it. I hope that's not being overly negative or down on things, but I just don't see anything to support that, bar if they are able to replicate the underlying performance that they produced against Burnley over the next 10 games, or thereabouts, they will 100% do it and they'll win a lot of games. But I just don't think they will, because a lot of those games aren't at home. They're not against Burnley. And there's just not been enough evidence that they are capable of doing that on a consistent basis this season. So I think they're in a really poor spot, I think, in terms of the potential for getting into the Champions League, which, hey, maybe that will make FSG's decision a little bit easier come the end of the season. But there's no doubt whatsoever it's going to be a huge blow to Liverpool if they miss out on the Champions League. And I think, to just reference back to Joyce's piece as well about the kind of sporting director and Michael Edwards and their contract situations, I'm guessing FSG must be pretty sick of kind of, this disciplined approach that's being taken to transfers and kind of the way that Liverpool's run. They must be quite annoyed that Liverpool are still so prone to kind of boom bust. Like, when's the last time City didn't qualify for the Champions League? And I know they operate in a slightly different kind of financial sphere to other clubs. I accept that. But Liverpool seems so prone to being able to fall out of the Champions League and not being able to just, even in the bad seasons, to just squeeze into fourth. We've seen so many times in recent years they've ended up in the Europa League in the bad seasons. Why can't they bring their floor up to the point whereby a bad season is fourth at a minimum? I find that fascinating. And for me, that asks sporting questions that are bigger than the head coach and go back to the sporting director and Michael Edwards and their roles. They really need to increase the floor, because I think they're just staring down the barrel quite clearly now of a season where they end up qualifying for the Europa League. I really find it hard to envisage anything other than that happening this season, to be honest.
Yeah, it's desperately want to be wrong. I suppose time's gonna tell on that one. I mean, even for you looking for hopes this week, Salah might be back. Maybe you might use Gomez, do you think, at right back away at Marseille, give some solidity, maybe push Frimpong higher forward. But there's not exactly mass rotation available. And the other thing is, the subs were pretty crap against Burnley as well, weren't they?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of what he does with team selection, I don't know whether he's just is he going to try and keep this team settled as he can, really, for these? And you've had a big break to the Marseille game, go as strong as you possibly can. And then your consideration then after that is who's fit for the weekend and who can I start in that one. I suspect that will likely be his approach, because the fact is, at the moment, for Liverpool, the next game is always the most important. So, maybe the changes, if he has to make them, will come in the game that follows away at Bournemouth. But he just has to put out whatever's his strongest team at the moment and hope that's enough to get something in Marseille.
Maybe. I suppose the final thing, is always trying good to leave it on a hope as well as realism as well. Is there just a hope that this season, when we've got to these points, we've been like, it's looking pretty bad. Liverpool have just offered us a flicker, be it Real Madrid, Inter in the San Siro, the Villa, there is just a chance still, which will probably annoy you more in a little bit, like the Arsenal game. Where's that been all season type of thing? But it is possible, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. They've got some good results in them, like you say. I mean, it could be suited to kind of go into Marseille and the kind of, they're going to play some attacking football. Liverpool can kind of soak it up a little bit and try and play a bit more kind of controlled football. And it might really kind of suit them to do that. So hopefully, and it's going to be tough in that atmosphere. But and the fact is, Liverpool have got quality players as well, by the way, who are capable of producing results. So you can't completely write them off, but it's just it's hard to be hugely optimistic just with what's being kind of served up at the moment.
It is. It's a huge week, people. Marseille Wednesday, Bournemouth Saturday. A lot of pressure could potentially land even further on Arne Slot. All it leaves me to say is, for the time, the insight, and for answering all the questions, David, as ever, is massively appreciated.
Thanks for having me.
And ladies and gents, that was another Media Matters